I never thought a simple shopping trip could change the course of my life completely, but somehow it did. I walked into Banana Republic that afternoon just looking for a few new shirts, maybe a jacket, something to make me feel like I had my life together again. I wasn't expecting anything extraordinary, certainly not the kind of moment that would turn my world upside down in the most beautiful, chaotic way imaginable. But life has a funny way of handing you everything you never knew you needed when you least expect it. The store was bright and alive with movement, upbeat music floating in the air, racks of neatly folded clothes surrounding me like a colorful maze. I wandered slowly between tables of sweaters and walls lined with polished shoes, running my fingers absently over soft fabrics, pretending to browse even though my mind was elsewhere. As I made my way toward the fitting rooms, that's when I saw him again, the employee I had noticed once before but hadn't dared to approach, even though something about him had stayed with me longer than I cared to admit. He stood near the entrance to the fitting rooms, clipboard in hand, handing out numbered plastic tags and smiling easily at customers as they passed. His dark hair was tousled just enough to look effortless, and his eyes, God, his eyes, were the kind you could get lost in if you stared too long, warm and playful and somehow a little mischievous at the same time. As if feeling my gaze, he looked up and for a moment, everything else disappeared. Our eyes locked, and he smiled, slow and deliberate, a small tilt of his lips that made my stomach flip in the most ridiculous way. I smiled back, heart pounding slightly harder against my ribs, the air between us crackling with something electric and unspoken. It could have been nothing, it should have been nothing. A smile, a glance, a passing moment in a store full of strangers. But somehow it wasn't. I gathered a few shirts and a pair of pants to try on, pretending I wasn't hyper-aware of him watching me as I approached. 3 items, he asked, his voice low and warm, his accent making every word feel a little heavier, a little sweeter. I nodded, handing him my clothes, and when his fingers brushed against mine as he passed me a fitting room tag, it was like touching a live wire, a jolt of something wild and dangerous racing through me. Inside the fitting room, I leaned back against the door for a second, trying to calm the rush of adrenaline that had surged through my body. I undressed slowly, peeling off my t-shirt and jeans, the cool air brushing against my skin as I changed. I tried to focus on the task at hand, trying on clothes, finding a size that fit, but I couldn't stop thinking about him, about the way his eyes lingered on mine, about the way my hand had tingled where he touched me. I was slipping into a new pair of pants, bare from the waist up, when I heard the soft creak of my door moving. I hadn't locked it properly, distracted by the way my heart had been pounding, and now it hung ajar just enough for someone to peek inside. Before I could react, before I could even feel embarrassed, I caught a glimpse of him standing there, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of me half-dressed. For a split second, the world held its breath. His gaze swept slowly over my bare chest, his lips parting just slightly, and then, God help me, he smiled again, a different smile this time, something darker, hungrier. It should have been awkward, but somehow it wasn't. Somehow it felt inevitable, like something we had both been daring the universe to make happen from the moment we first saw each other. In that instant, everything shifted. I didn't know where it would lead or what it would mean, but deep down, in the wild, reckless part of my heart, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. For a long, breathless second, neither of us moved, the tiny crack in the fitting room door holding 1,000 unspoken possibilities between us. I could hear the low thrum of music pulsing through the store outside, could feel the distant shuffle of customers moving along polished floors, but none of it mattered anymore. None of it could reach me through the thick, magnetic pull anchoring me to him. His eyes roamed slowly across my body, darkening with something fierce and beautiful, a hunger barely hidden beneath the surface of his usually easy smile. Still, he hesitated, standing just outside, one hand gripping the edge of the door like he was fighting some internal battle between responsibility and something infinitely more reckless. I watched him carefully, my heart pounding against my ribs so hard it felt like it might crack them open, and without thinking, without even breathing, I reached out, curling my fingers around the edge of the door, silently inviting him in. It only took a heartbeat for him to move, slipping quickly into the fitting room and closing the door behind him with a soft, decisive click. In the narrow space between us, the air grew thick and heavy, charged with something electric and unstoppable. I could smell him now, warm, clean, something faintly sweet like cologne mixed with the natural heat of his skin, and when he stepped closer, crowding into my space, it took everything in me not to shiver from the intensity of it all. Our bodies brushed lightly, my bare chest grazing against the soft fabric of his polo shirt, and the faint contact sent a shudder through me so sharp and undeniable that I sucked in a sharp breath. His hands found my waist, fingers digging lightly into my skin as if he needed to anchor himself, and when our mouths finally met, it was like striking a match in a room soaked with gasoline. The kiss started hard, desperate, months of silent wanting pouring into the crash of our lips, but it quickly softened, deepened, turning into something slow and reverent as if we both realized just how fragile this moment was. His hands roamed slowly up my sides, tracing the curves of my body with tender, hungry precision, sending waves of warmth and longing spiraling through every nerve ending. I responded eagerly, my own hands slipping beneath the hem of his shirt, feeling the hard lines of his stomach, the heat of his skin making me dizzy with want. Every soft gasp, every trembling sigh, every brush of lips against sensitive skin only drew us closer, tangled us deeper into the storm we had unleashed between us. He pressed me gently against the wall, careful but firm, his kisses trailing down my throat, his hands exploring boldly now, learning every inch of me as if memorizing my body by touch alone. My fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, needing all of him in a way that felt both terrifying and utterly right. The world outside the fitting room ceased to exist, dissolved into meaningless noise, leaving only the frantic, beautiful heartbeat of this wild, impossible connection. We didn't speak, didn't need to, our bodies telling stories our mouths couldn't form fast enough, every touch and kiss a promise we didn't dare say aloud. Slowly, deliberately, we peeled away the last barriers between us, discarding clothing like unnecessary lies, until there was nothing left but skin against skin, breath against breath, and the staggering realization that this wasn't just about lust. Hey, thanks for watching until this point. Please leave a comment if you're enjoying the video. It really helps us grow the channel and reach more people. And hey, thank you very much. Let's get back to story. It was about something deeper, something waiting, something inevitable. When we finally gave in completely, it was slow, it was careful, it was the most overwhelming, beautiful contact I had ever known. Every gentle caress, every whispered moan, every shared gasp built something powerful between us, something real and breathtakingly raw. The world might have been spinning around us, but in that tiny fitting room, time stood still, bowing to the gravity pulling us into each other's arms. When it ended, we stayed there for a long moment, breathing hard, bodies still tangled, hearts beating frantically against sweat-slicked skin. His forehead pressed against mine, his hands cradling my face like I was something precious, something fragile, something worth protecting at all costs. I closed my eyes and let myself believe it, let myself fall completely into the reckless, terrifying, beautiful unknown of him. Neither of us spoke as we slowly dressed, hands brushing, glances lingering, silent promises already forming in the space between heartbeats. We knew something had changed, something massive, something irreversible, and neither of us was ready to let it slip away. Not now. Not ever. Leaving the fitting room felt surreal, like stepping back into a world that no longer fit the way it once had. The store buzzed with life as if nothing had happened, as if the earth hadn't just tilted slightly on its axis inside a cramped fitting room with worn carpeting and fluorescent lights. He walked beside me, not touching, not speaking, but close enough that the air between us still hummed with the aftershocks of everything we'd just shared. When we reached the front of the store, he handed me my little plastic number with a small, secret smile, one that no one else would understand but that made my heart pound hard against my ribs all over again. I paid for the clothes without even thinking about what I was buying, barely hearing the cashier's cheerful chatter, my mind consumed by the memory of his mouth on mine, his hands on my skin, the quiet, desperate way he had clung to me. Outside, the sun was starting to dip low in the sky, painting the city in rich golds and deep blues, everything looking sharper, brighter, more alive than it had that morning. I stood by the glass storefront for a moment, wondering if that was it, if what had just happened would be left behind in that fitting room, a beautiful but fleeting memory I'd carry quietly with me forever. But then the glass door pushed open behind me and there he was, stepping into the cool evening air, his name tag hastily pulled from his shirt, his hair a little mussed like he hadn't even tried to pretend everything was normal. For a second, we just stared at each other, everything we didn't know how to say hanging thickly in the space between us. Then he smiled, that slow, devastating smile, and walked toward me, not rushing, not hesitating, his hands buried deep in his pockets like he was trying to stay casual even though his eyes gave him away completely. "You're not just gonna walk away, are you?" he asked softly, his voice low and rough in a way that sent a shiver racing through me. I shook my head, swallowing hard, feeling 1,000 words trying to push past my lips but managing only a quiet, broken, "No." He exhaled in relief, closing the distance between us with a few easy steps, his hand brushing against mine so lightly it was almost a question. I turned my hand over, lacing my fingers with his without hesitation, and just like that, something clicked into place between us, something solid and certain that neither of us could deny anymore. "Come with me," he said simply, his thumb stroking slow, lazy circles against the back of my hand. I nodded, letting him lead me away from the busy street, away from the people and the noise, down a quieter road lined with apartment buildings and trees whose leaves whispered secrets to the evening breeze. We didn't talk much as we walked, but it didn't feel awkward. It felt natural, like words would have only cluttered the connection already buzzing silently between us. His apartment was small but warm, filled with the soft clutter of someone who lived a life full of little comforts, stacks of books, cozy throws draped over the couch, the faint scent of coffee lingering in the air. He dropped his keys on a battered wooden table near the door and turned to face me, uncertainty flickering briefly across his features before I closed the gap, cupping his face gently between my hands, kissing him with every ounce of need and hope and promise I had inside me. This time, it was slower, deeper, no hurried touches or desperate gasps, only the quiet, consuming certainty that whatever had started between us wasn't going to burn out quickly. His hands slid up beneath my jacket, fingertips pressing firmly into my hips, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us, no room for doubts or fears. We made love that night slowly, unhurriedly, every touch deliberate, every kiss drawn out, every whispered word soaked in awe and reverence. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced before, tender, overwhelming, right in a way that made the world outside his apartment fade into nothing. And somewhere between kisses and whispered laughter and tangled sheets, I realized something terrifying and beautiful all at once. I didn't just want him for the night. I wanted him for whatever came next. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was spilling gently across the room, warming the sheets tangled loosely around us. For a moment, I simply lay there, my head resting against his chest, listening to the steady, comforting rhythm of his heartbeat beneath my ear. His arm was draped lazily around my shoulders, holding me close even in sleep, as if he couldn't bear to let go. Slowly, carefully, I shifted enough to lift my head, studying his sleeping face with a kind of quiet awe I had never felt for anyone before. His hair was messy from sleep, his mouth slightly parted, a soft, peaceful expression smoothing the usual playful lines of his features. He looked younger somehow in the morning light, more vulnerable, and the sight made something deep inside me tighten and ache in the best possible way. I brushed my fingertips lightly along the edge of his jaw, feeling the slight rasp of stubble beneath my touch, marveling at the way even something so simple could make my chest ache with how much I already cared. As if sensing my gaze, he stirred, blinking slowly awake, his lips curving into the smallest, sleepiest smile I had ever seen. "Morning," he murmured, voice rough with sleep, one hand reaching up to thread through my hair gently, pulling me back down until our foreheads touched. "Morning," I whispered back, closing my eyes, letting myself sink into the comfort and quiet joy of being there with him, exactly where I wanted to be. Neither of us spoke much after that. Words felt unnecessary when everything important was already understood, in the way our bodies fit together so perfectly, in the way his fingers traced slow, lazy circles against my back. Eventually, we got up, reluctantly pulling on clothes, moving around his small apartment with an easy kind of intimacy that made it feel like we had been doing this for years instead of hours. Over coffee, we really talked, for the first time, sharing stories and laughing about little things, our conversation flowing effortlessly between us. I learned that his name was Leo, that he had been working at Banana Republic for almost 2 years while trying to figure out what he really wanted to do with his life. He learned about me too, about my boring office job, about the small apartment I didn't really love but couldn't afford to leave yet, about how lonely I sometimes felt even in a city full of people. Every little piece we revealed felt like fitting another puzzle piece into place, building something bigger and stronger between us with every word, every smile, every shared memory. The more we talked, the more obvious it became that what had happened in the fitting room wasn't just some crazy, reckless mistake, it was the start of something real, something rare. By the time the afternoon sun slanted through the windows, painting golden patterns across the floor, neither of us wanted to say goodbye. Leo sat beside me on the couch, one arm slung casually across my shoulders, his thumb stroking slow patterns against my arm, and when he finally spoke, his voice was low, hesitant but sure. "You could stay tonight," he said quietly, his eyes searching mine carefully. "Or longer, if you want." I stared at him, heart thudding hard in my chest, the weight of what he was offering crashing over me all at once. It wasn't just another night he was offering, it was a beginning, a chance to build something we both needed more than we could admit aloud. I smiled, feeling warmth bloom in my chest, and leaned in to kiss him softly, savoring the simple, perfect connection that had already begun to anchor me to him. "I want to stay," I whispered against his lips, meaning every single word with all my heart. The days that followed blurred together in the sweetest way, a slow, beautiful unraveling of everything I thought I knew about my life. What had started as one night stretched into 2, then 3, until it no longer made sense to call my place home anymore because home had started to feel like wherever Leo was. We settled into a rhythm so naturally that it amazed me, waking up tangled together beneath soft sheets, cooking breakfast shoulder to shoulder in his tiny kitchen, laughing over spilled coffee and burnt toast like we had been doing it for years. Leo was easy to live with, effortless in the way he made space for me without even trying, always finding little ways to make me feel wanted and welcome. He cleared out a drawer for me by the second day, a quiet, casual act that meant more than any grand gesture ever could. I filled it with some clothes I'd retrieved from my old apartment, though honestly, I barely spent any time there anymore except to grab essentials, too eager to return to the life we were building together, piece by fragile piece. There was something magical about the way Leo touched me, even in the most mundane moments, his hand brushing against mine as we passed in the hallway, his arms slipping around my waist while I stood at the sink, his lips pressing softly to the back of my neck when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Every small gesture stitched me closer to him, weaving a quiet kind of happiness through my days that I had never experienced before. Nights were the best part, though. We would curl up on his old, battered couch, the one that sagged slightly in the middle, watching bad TV shows we barely paid attention to, too busy kissing, touching, learning each other's bodies all over again. There was an easy kind of heat between us, a fire that never seemed to burn out, only growing deeper, richer, every time we touched. Sometimes it was slow and lazy, sometimes frantic and desperate, but it was always filled with the same reverence, the same overwhelming gratitude that somehow, against every odd, we had found each other. One night, as we lay tangled together beneath the rumpled sheets, our bodies still humming from the slow, intense lovemaking we had shared, Leo propped himself up on one elbow, staring down at me with a look so full of raw affection it made my throat tighten painfully. "I still can't believe you walked into my store that day," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair gently from my forehead, his fingers lingering against my skin like he couldn't bear to stop touching me. "I still can't believe you followed me out," I whispered back, reaching up to cup his face in my hands, feeling the slight scratch of stubble against my palms. He leaned into my touch, closing his eyes briefly, as if memorizing the feel of me, the certainty of me, before opening them again and whispering the words that would stay with me forever. "I think I was always waiting for you," he said simply, like it was the easiest truth in the world. I kissed him then, slow and deep and full of all the love and hope I didn't know how to put into words yet. And as he kissed me back, holding me so tightly it felt like he was trying to fuse us into one being, I knew without a doubt that he was right. We had been waiting for each other without even knowing it. 2 lives orbiting closer and closer until the universe finally shoved us together in the most unexpected, beautiful way. Weeks turned into months, and somewhere along the way, the life I had stumbled into with Leo became not just something I wanted, but something I needed with every piece of my heart. It wasn't always perfect. There were small arguments about laundry piles and forgotten groceries, little misunderstandings that made us laugh more often than they made us angry. But even those imperfections felt precious, because they were ours. Living with him wasn't about chasing the high of that first wild moment in the fitting room anymore. It was about building something lasting, something real. We learned each other's rhythms. The way he liked his coffee too strong and his socks always mismatched. The way I needed silence in the mornings and could never remember where I left my keys. I learned that Leo hummed when he was happy, little tuneless songs under his breath while he folded laundry or stirred pasta on the stove. And every time I heard it, it made my chest ache with something so tender it almost hurt. Sometimes, when the world outside felt too loud or too heavy, we would climb into bed early, curling together beneath the worn, familiar sheets, sharing soft kisses and slow touches until the weight of the world faded away. There were nights we made love with the same burning urgency that had started it all. But there were also nights we simply held each other, our bodies pressed close, breathing quietly in sync, content just to exist in the same space. One evening, long after the city had gone quiet outside our windows, Leo pulled me close, resting his forehead against mine, his voice a soft whisper against my skin. "You changed everything," he said, his hands sliding slowly up my back, his fingers spreading warmly across my shoulder blades. "Before you, I didn't even realize how lonely I was." I kissed him gently, feeling tears prick the corners of my eyes, overwhelmed by how deeply I loved him, how lucky I felt every single day to have found him in the most unexpected way. "I was lonely too," I whispered back, my voice trembling slightly. "But I'm not anymore." He smiled, that devastating, beautiful smile that had undone me from the very first moment, and pulled me closer still, as if he could merge our bodies completely and keep me safe forever. In his arms, I felt invincible, loved, truly seen in a way I never had before. The fitting room had been the start, a spark in a powder keg we hadn't known we were carrying, but what we had now, this life we were building, was something so much deeper, something rooted in trust, affection, and the quiet, powerful certainty that we belonged together. It didn't matter how it had begun, how reckless and unexpected it had been. What mattered was that we had found each other, and neither of us was letting go. As I drifted off to sleep that night, Leo's arm draped securely over my waist, his breath warm against the back of my neck, I realized something simple and profound. The life I had always wanted wasn't some distant, perfect dream waiting somewhere far away. It was right here, messy and beautiful and perfectly real, wrapped up in the arms of the man who had changed everything with one stolen glance and one reckless, perfect moment in a fitting room. And I wouldn't trade a single second of it for anything.